Welcome back, everyone, to Wednesday Inspirational Book Lounge. I'm your host, Anna Murby. Today's guest is Hubert Carl. Hubert and Diane Carl were married for 45 years. They both were involved with ministering to the deaf before they met. After graduating from Sacramento Bible Institute in the early 1980s, they worked with biblical ministries worldwide for almost 20 years. During that time, they spent 10 years in Los Angeles, living in an apartment complex set up for meeting the needs of the deaf-blind. They went on to minister in a deaf church near Sacramento. Diane battled cancer for 30 years, and the Lord used her sickness to lead many people to Himself. She was taken home to be with the Lord on July 13th, 2024. Hubert is also a published writer on marriage counseling. Enjoy this week's installment of 10 Famous Evangelists, read by Hubert Carl.
Ten Famous Evangelists by Basil Miller, published by Zondervan Publishing House, 1947, read by Hubert Carl. Chapter 9, Billy Sunday, a Modern Soul Winner. Billy Sunday, who left the baseball diamond for the pulpit, probably spoke to larger crowds than any other man of his generation. His career reads like fiction. It is a series of miracles filled with the workings of God's marvelous grace. Billy was fast on the diamond, and when he began to preach, he put action and power and physical demonstrations into his pulpit career. There was nothing shabby about his baseball playing, for he was one of the most popular members of the Chicago White Stockings team. Fast on his feet, he is said to have been the only man ever to round the diamond, touching every base in 14 seconds. He became a spectacular player, the idol of the bleachers, and when he played, the town turned out to see him. When God saved him, Sunday determined to give him all that he had, as he had formerly given his best to baseball. God endowed Billy with speed, endurance, and muscular coordination of no mean degree, which were a preparation for the strenuous soul-winning campaigns he was to conduct later for the kingdom. Billy's background was not the kind from which great soul winners spring, nor was there much in his ancestry to which he could point as the source of his remarkable ability. All he was and did came from the power of the Holy Spirit when he was converted. The Sundays lived on a farm near Ames, Iowa, where his mother's father helped found the university. His grandfather, Corey, was the cousin of Ulysses S. Grant, famous Civil War general and later President of the United States. Many times young Billy heard his grandfather tell that he refused to visit Grant in the White House. Billy was born during the Civil War in a 2-room log house which centered on the 160-acre homestead. His father, William Sr., had marched off to war, leaving his wife and young son Edward, and he never knew that a second son was to bless the home, for William was killed in action. The widow had little difficulty in making a living as long as grandfather Corey was alive, but when Billy was 9 and his brother 11, the house was visited by poverty. This caused him and Edward to be sent to the Soldiers' Orphan Home in Glenwood, Iowa. The lads had to beg their way to the home, as there was no money to send them. Here they remained until Billy was 14, when he ran off, deciding to go his own way in the world. First he took a hand at farming with his grandfather. One day he accidentally broke an ox yoke, and he could take no more of the old man's tongue-lashing. He went to Nevada, Iowa, where he worked in a hotel for room and board. Later he took a job with a lieutenant governor of the state, which enabled him to finish high school. During this time, he went into sports, joining the ball team, and became the town's most popular boy. It was through the volunteer fire department that his fame for speed spread. Each town had its fire department composed of local boys and men who were fast runners. During these times, tournaments were held in which the departments displayed their speed. Billy was then named the Demon Runner and was called to Marshalltown to play on the ball team. From the Marshalltown team, his fame leapt state boundaries, and he headed to the top until he finally landed in the place on the Chicago White Stockings team, where he made baseball history. One day, while the team was playing in the hometown, he walked down a Chicago street, where he heard a group of religious people in a wagon singing and playing gospel songs. This stirred memories of those long-ago times when in Iowa he would hear his mother sing the same songs and had joined himself in the church. Harry Monroe, the superintendent of the Pacific Garden Mission, gave an invitation to the crowd to attend the mission that night, where they were able to hear testimonies of safecrackers, burglars, second-story workers, drunkards, who had spent time in the big house and who today were sober, honest, and had good homes and were trusted and respected. Billy decided to accept the invitation, and as he listened to the messages, caught the glory of the converted people's faces. He became convicted of his sins. Returning to the mission night after night, he at length gave himself to the Lord and was saved. "If the same floor is in the building," he said later when a famous evangelist, "I can show you the knot hole in the board upon which I knelt that stormy night 40 years ago. I have followed Jesus from that very day to this very second, like a hound on the trail of a fox." Sunday left the meeting a new-made man, with the melody of heaven ringing in his soul. When he reported to the baseball field the next morning for practice, the entire world seemed to have been washed clean by God's presence. That night in 1886 was the center upon which his career pivoted. Having been saved, redeemed by grace divine, there was but one message for him to declare: the same saving power of God. He joined the Jefferson Park Presbyterian Church, pastored at the time by Frank Dwight Talmage, the son of famous T. Dwight Talmage. During the next 4 years, he played ball and was known as a Christian player who prayed himself out of many tight games. When the score was even and there were 3 men on bases and 2 men were down, it was not God's will for Billy to remain a ball player, for there was a more divinely wrought mission for him to fulfill. At the height of his fame, when the fans idolized him, he was offered the secretaryship of the religious department of the Chicago YMCA. This was in 1892, and his salary was to be $1,000 a year. The famed ball player sought to cast his lot in a more important game than that of baseball, so he was not long in making a decision. When it was rumored that he was to be a Y secretary, the ball's team manager told him to write your own ticket. He had tasted the glories of salvation and was through henceforth with the ball diamond. During Sunday's 3rd year as secretary of the Y, J. Wilbur Chapman, the evangelist, asked Sunday to assist in his campaign and to help put up the big tent, direct advertising, and speak to overflow crowds. Billy said he offered me the job, and I accepted. It felt that it would be a big help to me in the future. In fact, this was a preparatory step for God's work in which Sunday was to step. Within 2.5 years, Dr. Chapman accepted the pastorate of the Bethany Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, and this left Billy without a job. 1888, he had married a beautiful girl named Helen, and the two consecrated young people knew but one way to meet the emergency. Going to their knees, they put the matter up to the Lord in prayer. As they wondered about their future, as whether to go back to baseball, God heard their cry, and the answer came in the form of a call from 3 churches in Garner, Iowa, asking him to hold a revival campaign in the little town. In telling the story later, Billy said, "You bet I wired them I'd be there." This campaign launched Sunday on his own as evangelist, and from then on there were always calls for the preacher who took off his coat and loosened his tie to hold a meeting. From that moment, there was always more meetings for him to conduct than he could accept. Billy rolled up his sleeves and went to work for God. He often pitched his own tent, spoke in the opera house, the theater, even on the streets. In 1917, he played baseball in Los Angeles for the benefit of soldiers, raising, by the game, $17,000, of which went to aid the boys who had been wounded in World War I. Often, massive tabernacles, seating thousands, were erected for his crowds, and always the people paid the bills. One campaign netted over $125,000, all of which, he says, went for God's work. During his active career, he preached 20, averaging 75 sermons a month. Often, he spoke as many as 5 times daily. There was no limit to his physical endurance, and the man who could take 100 yards in 10 seconds flat had a body of steel for such strenuous labors. His throat was like iron and his nerves of metal. God blessed him bountifully in this work that he did. One Sunday went to New York City for a campaign. $1,000 were laid in the offering plates, all of which went overseas during the First World War. John D. Rockefeller said at the beginning of the campaign, "You won't have to worry about anything." People by the thousands jammed his tabernacles to hear this miracle of the 20th century. In Columbus, Ohio, when he spoke to women only, 40,000 women tried to get into a building which held only 1/4 of that number. In his 1917 Rockefeller Back to New York campaign, 1.5 million people heard him during the 10 weeks. 150,000 of them hit the sawdust trail, as Sunday called his inquiry room. During the last day of the revival, 50,000 people were unable to get into the tabernacle. It is said that 2 million people gave their hearts to God during Sunday's campaigns, out of which number hundreds are now actively engaged in religious work as preachers, missionaries, and thousands serve their local churches in unpaid capacities. On entering the pulpit, he went into action for God, taking off his coat, rolling up his sleeves, removing his collar, and then moving about the platform he delivered his message. All the while he was rattling like a machine gun with the hottest gospel fire I know. His language was picturesque, as, for example, one reason sin flourishes is that it is treated as a cream puff instead of a rattlesnake. Some churches are so cold you could skate down the aisle and there are icicles hanging from the chandeliers. If we all quit sin and serve God, we'd have the devil in the hospital by the 4th of July. For 25 years, this firebrand for God said, "I never slept more than 4 hours a night." In his later years, he held one-night conventions, spoke extensively, as he always did, against the liquor interest, and gradually began to loosen his grip on active evangelism. On November 6, 1935, while in Chicago visiting his brother-in-law, he suffered a heart attack and peacefully passed into his heavenly rest, which through a strenuous race on God's track he had well earned. Word flashed around the world that Billy Sunday was dead. His funeral services were held in Moody Memorial Church, which was packed with a large audience. The Chicago Cubs, known when Billy played as the Chicago White Stockings, sent a massive wreath in memory of their old teammate. The funeral message was delivered by Dr. H.A. Ironside, pastor of the Moody Church, himself a famous preacher. Homer Rodenhaver, for many years Billy's song leader, sang the beautiful hymn, "Good night here, but good morning up there. Good morning up there where Christ is light. Good morning up there where there is no night. When we step from this earth to God's heaven so fair, we'll say good night here, but good morning up there." Countless thousands rejoice because of Sunday's messages. As a man who lived for one idea of winning souls to Christ, Billy Sunday was rightly entitled to the spiritual fame which his generation showered upon him.
Thank you for tuning in. Come back next week for another installment of 10 Famous Evangelists read by Hubert Carl. This is Wednesday Inspirational Book Lounge with Anna Murby.